Alright, so welcome back everyone. I had started down a particular path last time, and I ended up scrapping the video entirely because I realized I was doing work that isn't actually going to be for this game. So I'd started on this overworld enemy placement component that was going to be responsible for taking all the enemies that were created from our enemy unit's spawn system to place them in the overworld based on, making sure that they're not colliding with the wall. And if we engage the enemy here and the wall's detected to be here, we start placing enemies over to the right. And if we run out of room, we start placing them backwards and so on and so forth. And I started that as more of an exercise in building out a system that, I could use for future games and projects. I wasn't actually going to do that for this because one of the things I've been thinking about in regards to the battle system is getting rid of the enemy unit concept entirely and just having the enemies that appear on the overworld as combatants, and you get locked into place and you fight them, and that's that. And if there are surrounding very, very close by enemies, they're also part of the battle. But other enemies can't really engage in the fight, and an enemy does not exist as a representational unit on the overworld. It's just the enemy. So I think I was kind of going down this other rabbit hole with it, and ultimately that rabbit hole was something I'm not going to use, at least based on the current design changes I've decided to pursue. So we're just going to go from there. This enemy overworld placement thing, goodbye. Forget about it. You never saw it. And we're going to go ahead and get rid of him also off of this guy. So forget all about that. Doesn't exist. Now, what we want to do is, so our battle manager, we're passing in this confrontation info. Now, I changed it to confrontation info instead of going off of enemy unit, because with confrontation info, I provide either the enemy unit or a single enemy. And our system right now only deals with enemy unit, right? So I need to kind of split and go ahead and work off of just that. So second off, we no longer need this .enemy unit, right? Because confrontation info is stored and it's exposed and it's good. So let's go ahead and just go off of that. So this .enemy unit goes away. Confrontation info. Clear enemy unit. Remove model, yeah. And this only happens if the player wins. Yeah, okay, so if the enemy unit's provided and the player didn't escape the battle, meaning the battle ended with the enemy's death. So, really, this .enemy unit, this .confrontation info, enemy unit. And that should be everything, so that's good. Okay. Now, where all are we using enemy unit in here? So, we're null checking it there. Spawn enemies. The enemy unit's not equal to null. Clear enemy unit, which null checks inside of it. So yeah, so I think we're good on that regard, aside from this spawn enemies. So if this .confrontation info.enemy unit is not equal to null, then we need to spawn enemies. And that's it, right? Same thing. Now, here's going to be the trick, right? So, if it's just an enemy, what do we need to do? So, first off, start battle gets called from something, right? It gets called from, like, battle detection. Detect battle start. So, if the collider has an enemy unit, we call start battle, and we give it the enemy unit. Else, really, we mainly want this. Enemy, if the enemy is not equal to null, we're going to make the exact same call, except we're going to give it the single enemy instead of the enemy unit. Now, I think in place of that, so spawn enemies is creating our enemy from our enemy unit information. And he's dealing in that. For our purposes, what happens in create enemy? Am I hooking to any events or anything? I am not. We're going to have a model in play for the enemy unit. All this stuff will already be defined by our new spawner that we're going to add for spawning enemies rather than enemy units. Anything else going on in here? So we just do an add enemy. And if we're spawning enemies from a reset, meaning that our enemy list already has items in it, we're just resetting the HP and setting the object to active. We'll come back to that. So, where we spawn our enemies and restart battle, else, you know what? We're going to split this out. I mean, this is restart battle. Yeah, this has already added the killed enemies back into the regular enemies collection in the case of a restart. So we're just going to go ahead and nix this part of it. So spawn enemies is going to just say the enemies count is equal to 0, then create all the enemies. Reset enemies is going to assume that we've got an enemy collection. We're going to reset our stats to the maximum HP. And we're going to set the object to active. And that's it. Yeah. Spawn enemies, else, what do we want to do with an enemy unit? This dot add enemy, confrontation info dot enemy unit dot single enemy. And we're going to go ahead and put a to-do in here. We'll come back to this in a little bit, but to-do, check for other nearby enemies and bring them along. That may happen up front. Like we might change single enemy into a list of enemies and do the bounds check like up front as part of the enemy detection. But otherwise, I think we're just going to leave it at that. So let's go ahead and say, what else do we need to say here? So our enemies are set up. We're going to add the enemy to the battle, and everything else should exist as normal, right? Now, we do need a new spawning mechanism here. So, spawn point. our existing spawn does what? Our enemy spawn location, I believe, always spawns enemy units, yes? Yeah, so what constitutes the enemy unit killed? Yeah, I don't think that, on destroy is really all that is. So, we're going to want to base class this enemy spawn setup, right? So here's going to be the trick. Enemy spawn location. We're going to do a spawn location as a base class. Enemy unit spawn location, which we're going to take all of our existing code from enemy spawn location and move that in. What's an enemy spawn manager? It's nothing. Spawn location. And let's see here. What kind of common information are we going to have? We need to know about the enemy information repository. Time till next spawn, spawn radius, max enemies, prefab dictionary. We're going to need that as well. Milliseconds between spawn time. Min distance from player. Is this even getting any use? Yeah. Yeah, that ensures we don't spawn right on top of the player. Our string of monster keys. Arena name. And I suppose that can hang around. Yeah, so really all of these, enemies per unit. Yeah, I mean really all of these are going to be used. Now let's see here. So on start, repository, prefab, blah, 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 blah. spawn unit, I believe I'm gonna make a I'll make spawn a virtual or abstract. Update can come up to the base class as well. Let's see, spawn unit. So spawn unit is getting our enemy information from the repository. This logic's somewhat specific to enemy units. So protected abstract void spawn unit. And we'll skip over all that for the moment. Get next location. So get a random point inside of our circle. Multiply that point by a factor of our spawn radius from our center is our location. And then we're going to do a while that distance between the player and that position is less than the min distance from player that we specified in the editor. Return the location. Yeah. Let's see, your on unit killed. This isn't actor killed, this is enemy unit killed. So we'll leave that here. We'll need to remember to hook onto the enemy killed. But we also need, we'll also need our update to not spawn new enemies while we're in battle. Which honestly, I think that I think for enemy units, I probably want that to be true as well. But I'm not going to worry so much about that for the moment. Update spawn time. Yeah. And really, this is all dealing with our enemy unit spawn location. Right? And we will leave that there for the moment. So, switch back over here, pop into our debug menu, swap our script for enemy unit spawn location. And see what happens. Oh yeah, because I took that thing off. Yeah. So that's yeah, that's more or less fine. So our spawn system. So we have a enemy unit spawn location that does all that jive. Let's look at our enemy spawn location. So we're going to, let's see, number of enemies. Well, honestly now, actually, spawn location, enemies per unit is a very enemy unit spawn location concept. What else we got here? Min distance, maximum number of enemies, spawn radius. Yeah, okay. That should be fine. Nothing here is using that, right? Yeah. So enemy spawn location, we're not interested in number of units, or rather number of enemies per unit. Let's see, unit enemies is equal to that new array. For number enemies, we're going to get a random entry based on monster keys. We're just going to do that straight from the start. Enemy spawn information. Was I just referencing this by string in the other one? Most frequent enemy dot overworld prefab dictionary. Wait a minute. Wait a tick. Right. I set it up there because because that differentiates the AI behavior for chasing and moving around and crap like that. Which is still fine. So we have our random entry, em. We're gonna get the prefab of em.overworld prefab. Yeah, so we have our enemy. So what do we got here? So metadata.key should also have, really should have all of these. Droppable items. Where's that coming from? Yeah. Okay. So that just has the drop rate and everything. Alright, so that should be fine. Yeah, we're using the Overworld prefab from the metadata. Display name, HP, damage, stamina, XP, droppable items. Yeah, so that should all be good. This is for determining the enemy model on the overworld that's going to represent our enemy. We're already doing that. We don't have an enemy unit. We've already taken care of this. Wait, what does the enemy unit know about the spawner location and spawner radius? That's to deal with the behavior. You know, and I'll tell you what. I am perfectly fine with the enemy knowing about the location that the enemy is spawned from, right? Like, not just information, but I'm okay with it having the enemy spawn location instance. Because I want our grazing behavior and whatever other AI behaviors that end up taking advantage of that information to know that. Plus, having the spawn location gives us the arena name, so we can actually get rid of that on the enemy unit front, right? So if I do the same thing here, I can get rid of arena name, I can get rid of spawn radius, get rid of that vector for spawn location. Enemy en.killed. If you'll remember, we have this guy. Transform.child count is equal to yeah. So, let's build and see what all errors we're getting now that I deleted those couple properties off enemy unit. Let's see, arena name cannot be set. Spawner location, spawner radius, and unit spawn location is equal to this. Unit.spawnLocation.arena is not exposed. reading that. So I meant to call that a spawn location, not enemy spawn location. Same with the enemy itself. I want to go by the abstract class. Oh, whoops. Wait, what? Enemy unit spawn location. Most frequent enemy dot what? What was this? Overworld prefab. Yeah, okay. Cool, cool. So just for shits and giggles, I'm going to do myself a favor here. Because I've got some wonky stuff going on in this scene, we're going to go ahead and just save this scene real quick. We're going to pop back to my test level. Scenes, there we are. We'll pop back out to field 1. Actually, we're going to retrofit this a little bit. So spawn location. Where'd you go? So we're trying to instantiate something that's null. Why would we do that? That's ridiculous. Oh. Well, of course, I don't have a patrol enemy unit. It's just a little data issue. One moment. Data. Data, enemy information, patrol unit is Gray Bunny 1. So from my spawn point, Gray Bunny 1 goes away. Problem solved. So they're my enemies. They're all cool. Let's get into a fight. Fight didn't work. You know, first rule is always regression test, right? So we got to make sure that our existing setup works so that these things can live side by side. So what happened? Well, first off, let's take a look at our spawn enemies. Our enemy unit spawn location. Let's step through. So we have our enemy units. So that's fine. Let's take a look at our detect battle start. So he's getting enemy unit is equal to unit. And these guys are actually here, yes? It's an enemy unit. It's got some grazing behavior. Blabbity, blabbity, blabbity. Let's take a look at battle manager, start battle. Get into a fight. Okay, actually, I think I know what it is. But let's go ahead and step through here anyway. So, battle starting, clear enemies. We're going to spawn the enemies based on the unit. Yeah, so we have 2 enemies. That's looking good. Blabbity, 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 and away we go. Now, if I'm correct, yeah, this guy's all jacked. That's the problem. So what happens when you share prefabs between scenes? So we've doubled down on our guys here. I had a similar issue earlier with something different. Oops, stepped into my breakpoint. Let's kill that. There we go. Alright, so now we're back here. Things are working as expected. Should pop back out of the battle arena. There we go. Let's get into another fight. There's someone. Give them a quick QTE. And that looks good. Alright, cool. So, that's fine. Let's go ahead and pop back to our indoor arena. Now, first off, this is a problem, right? So what's going to happen here is I'm going to create a new game object. I'm going to add battle manager, and that's going to be it for the moment. Yeah, we're getting rid of him. So here's another thing. So our spawn location, this spawn point is based on the prefab for enemy units. Yes? Yes. And that's fine. We're going to duplicate this guy. He's going away. And he's going to be an enemy spawn point. We're going to debug. We're going to replace this script with our enemy spawn point. enemy unit spawn location. I think I flubbed that up a bit. Debug enemy spawn location. What's an enemy spawner? Am I just like completely messing things up here? Enemy unit spawn location. Oh, am I debugging and that's the problem here? I can't see. I have no clue. It's a little late in the day for me, folks. Bear with me. Enemy spawn location. That's all fine. What the hell is an enemy spawner? Oh, that's the thing. I gotta rename that. That's dumb. That's the model. The guy that deals with pulling the models out of the object pool and all that good stuff. Alright, so enemy unit spawn location. Right? Let's stop being silly now. Debug. We're replacing him with enemy spawn location. Why does this insist on trying to bring this enemy spawner in? I'm so confused, folks. Is it because I'm arrowing over it? Is that what's happening here? Because I'm using the arrow keys to navigate over it, it's updating this in real time and therefore losing my data. Oh, Unity. Oh, Unity, you save me so much time and give me so much pain. So, all this stuff is good. Now, let's create a new prefab for that. And this is going to be ditched for... Alright, so... Blabbity, blabbity, blabbity. Prefabs. We've got our enemy units, patrol enemy unit, test combat enemy. So that's good for the moment. Yeah. So I'm going to take a quick break, and I think in our next video we'll go ahead and just swap up some of our patrol behaviors and all this stuff here to be a combination of battle behavior as well as the enemy overworld AI. And then we'll set that loose on the player and see where we end up. So thank you, and I will see you next time.